Canadians will not be able to eat, heat, and house themselves if they face the combination of NDP Liberal tax hikes and American tariffs. And that is why common sense Conservatives are calling for an emergency to debate to develop a plan to protect our economy and our security, a plan that puts Canada first. We want a Canada First plan to defend our people. So we, as a Conservative team, ask for your approval to hold this debate as early as tonight. Let us put partisanship aside. Let us stand up for our people. Let us put our country first and foremost. Let us bring it home.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I am really pleased to rise and speak to this very important debate. Canada and the United States have one of the strongest and closest relationships in the world, particularly when it comes to trade and our shared border and border security. Canada places the highest priority on border security and on the integrity of our shared border. Canada is the largest export market for the United States in the world, larger than China, Japan, the United Kingdom, and France combined. It is also the case that the things we sell to the United States are the things they really need. We sell them oil. We sell them electricity. We sell them critical minerals and metals. Canada is essential to the United States domestic energy supply. Last year, 60% of U.S. crude oil imports originated in Canada. And the energy the United States imports from Canada is more important today than ever, at a time when we see how hungry AI is for energy and how important AI is in the economic vision of the new U.S. administration. Canada's critical minerals and metals are absolutely essential as well, as we in North America seek to develop supply chains which are resilient and secure, and critically, supply chains that do not make us dependent on China. Our government is committed to a Team Canada approach. The Prime Minister tomorrow will be meeting with the First Ministers of provinces and territories. We have been working and will continue to work with business and labor leaders from coast to coast to coast. Specifically, in the days since the U.S. election, I've met with labor leaders, I've met with leaders from the steel industry, I've met with leaders from the car sector, I've met with the leaders of Canada's major pension funds, I've met with leaders from the oil and gas sector, I've met with leaders from the nuclear sector, I've met with leaders from the aluminum sector, I've met with leaders from the electricity sector, I've met with the leaders of our major banks, I've met with Canada's AI leaders, and I've met with Canada's leading innovators. This is Team Canada.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. When it comes to the border, let me be clear, both to Canadians and to our American neighbors. Law enforcement agencies from our two countries, the RCMP, the Canadian Border Services Agency, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection work together every single day to disrupt the scourge of fentanyl coming from China and other countries. In addition, the CBSA is continuously strengthening its ability to detect opioids through enhanced inspections at ports of entry, detector dogs, and emerging technologies. Canada and Canadians have the right and the need to have total control over who enters our country. our American neighbors likewise have the right and the need to totally control who enters their country. And Canada is absolutely committed to working with our American neighbors to ensure that their northern border is fully secure, even as we work to ensure that our southern border is fully secure. We need to be strong. We need to be smart. We know that we face significant challenges. We all know that. We also know that there are real opportunities. And we know that by working together, by playing as a united Team Canada, Canada can and will be successful. Thank you very much.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to denounce the terrorist threat on Canada that President Trump announced, to propose a real action plan to respond to this and to put Canada first.
Today to denounce President Trump's threat of tariffs on our country, to propose a common sense action plan to respond, but most of all, to put Canada first. We have a president south of the border who's made it clear he wants to put American workers and American security first. And that's his right. But he and everyone else should know that when I'm Prime Minister, we will have a head of government that puts Canada's workers and Canada's security first. And that includes maintaining the most successful trade relationship the world has ever seen. This is the world's longest ever defended border. $2 billion of goods go across that border every day. Just to put that in perspective, more goods go between Canada and the U.S. in a few days than between the U.S. and Japan all year, or in an entire month. The Canada-U.S. border is 5,525 miles long if you include Alaska. It has 120 border crossings that facilitate 350,000 daily crossings. That is in addition to the merchandise that goes each way. The sheer volume of this relationship requires intricate planning and precision to get these goods moving back and forth. An automobile will cross the border 7 times before it is completed and sent off to market. By the way, the Americans should understand that we're pretty important to them too. The reality is that Canada purchases more goods from the United States than does the entire European Union, despite Canada's population being 1/15 the size of Europe. Canada is the top export destination to 31 U.S. states. The two countries have a thoroughly interconnected manufacturing supply chain, and we are completely reliant on each other for energy. Energy infrastructure between our two countries is so interconnected that we have 35 major electrical transmission lines and 70 oil and gas pipelines across the border. Canada provides 40% of U.S. crude imports, making it America's largest foreign energy supplier, something that President Trump should care about if he intends to keep his promise to cut gas prices in half. He is going to need our oil and our energy in order to do that. And we're going to need continued access to the American economy if we are to succeed. We trade more with the United States than we do, actually twice as much with the United States than we do with the rest of the world combined. We enter this crisis in a state of weakness. We have a weakened economy, a weakened military, and most of all, a weakened Prime Minister. And that weakness, I think, may have been one of the reasons why President Trump believed that he could go ahead and make these threats and trample all over our Prime Minister again. Mr. Speaker, here is the sad reality. Our GDP per capita is smaller than it was 10 years ago, even while the American economy per capita has grown by 18%. Our per capita GDP fell more than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. We're one of the only countries that has not recovered its economy since before COVID happened. In reality, our housing costs have doubled, our national debt has doubled, food bank use have all doubled in the last 4 years. All of this before the threat of these tariffs. Before the threat of these tariffs, food prices had increased 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. Before the threat of these tariffs, our national debt had grown by over 100% in a decade. Before the threat of these tariffs, $500 billion USD more Canadian investment went south than came back. That's Canadian investment dollars building American mines, factories, pipelines, paying American, not Canadian, wages. And on top of that, the threats that we heard last night should have come as no surprise. Yet, for some reason, they did surprise the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. It was only 20 days ago that the Finance Minister said, Canada will be fine, nothing to worry about. Well, they should have seen this coming a mile away. President Trump had been saying that he would do this. He was elected 3 weeks ago. You'd think the Prime Minister would have been furiously planning and preparing, meeting with the premiers and talking about a counter plan during that time. And now we learn that since the threat happened, he's come up with exactly one response: a Zoom call. He's going to hold a Zoom call tomorrow. Of course, the media is absolutely captivated by this development. There's going to be a Zoom call between 11 or 12 politicians, and somehow this is going to solve the problem. We need a real plan, real action that will defend our economy and our security, and most of all, to put Canada first.
We need a real plan to put Canada first and a plan for our economy and security.
Mr. Speaker, the debate is over. There can be no tax increases. The tax increases the Prime Minister proposed on work, investment, energy were irresponsible and destructive all along. But now they are economic suicide. Think about the impact that a 61-cent a litre carbon tax would have when the tax is zero south of the border. President Trump has made it clear he wants our jobs and our businesses. You can only imagine his economic development teams calling trucking companies, factories, forestry enterprises, saying, hey, you're facing a 61-cent a litre carbon tax north of the border. Drive 50 kilometers south and we have zero carbon tax. By the way, business and personal taxes are already much lower and will drop further. There will be a powerful sucking sound of jobs, businesses, and money leaving our country to enrich the United States. This is like a tariff imposed by our own government on our own economy, compounded with a real tariff from the United States of America. That this would cripple our economy. So we are calling for the Prime Minister to announce today that he will cancel all tax increases on energy, on work, on businesses. Let's give our people a fighting chance to save their jobs. Secondly, Canadian energy is not the enemy. Our energy sector is our #1 net export. Yet the Prime Minister has made it explicit that he wants to phase out that sector. He has blocked 2 pipelines, he blocked the Tech Frontier mine, and he has prevented us from building a single solitary LNG liquefaction plant, which, by the way, would have allowed us to ship our natural gas to countries other than the United States of America. Right now, because the Prime Minister has blocked LNG liquefaction on both coasts, we're stuck giving every single cubic foot of LNG we export to the Americans on their terms so that they can liquefy it, they can upgrade it, and they can turn it into a profit, something that to which, presumably, the 25% tariff would apply. We need to end this madness. First of all, we must announce here and now the cancellation of the production cut for the Canadian oil and gas sector. We should go around the Americans and send our gas to displace dirty dictator energy, to reduce coal fire burning, to use our clean Canadian hydro to liquefy it, to send it off to Europe and break European dependence on Putin, to turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. Next, we have to rebuild our military. It is now clear. In 2023, Canada spent more money on consultants and professional services than we did on our Army, Navy, and Air Force combined. The Army spent $34 million on new sleeping bags that aren't even suitable for Canadian winters. Half of military vehicles aren't fit to deploy. We've run out of ammunition, 155 millimeter artillery shells, with no plans to reload. While the Prime Minister spends millions on Liberal-linked green companies, he's not able to provide the necessary shells and ammo to fire on a potential future enemy. The Liberal government has now announced it will cut a further $1 billion from the budget. Canadian troops in Latvia had to buy their own helmets, rain gear, and vests. Canadian troops in Poland are not being reimbursed for their meals. D&D is hiking rents on soldiers even as they struggle to retain and recruit members. The military is short 16,500 servicemen and women, but only recruited 4,000 last year, a total of 4,000 all of last year. Weird, woke, wasteful obsessions undermined our military and drive down recruitment. The reason why the Canadian military cannot recruit is because young men and women do not want anything to do with the divisive identity politics that's being imposed on the forces by this government. And rather than fixing this problem, the minister in question is more worried about banning a Navy marching song that is not politically correct. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, this woke agenda is dividing and distracting people from our work. Young women and men don't want to have anything to do with this woke agenda. They want to fight for our country. They want to be proud of the Canadian flag. We are going to eliminate this woke agenda and recruit proud young Canadians to support our armed forces.
We will have a warrior culture, not a woke culture. Now, we know this is all going to cost money, and that's going to be difficult because we will inherit a dumpster fire of a budget. We know that Canada's families are the most indebted in the G7. The national debt has doubled in size, and the Prime Minister's spending is still out of control. He's added more debt than the 22 prior Prime Ministers combined and keeps piling it on. That said, and by the way, his big priority now is to take GST off potato chips. Can you imagine that being your economic priority in the current environment we're in today? Mr. Speaker, we have a real plan, and a plan that we will build out between now and the next election. A common sense plan that will cut back on foreign aid to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies, eliminate useless back office bureaucracies, and procurement boondoggles, and redirect all of those billions in savings to rebuilding our forces. And this is how we will do it. We will expand our presence in the north to keep Beijing and the Russians out. We will secure the continent against attacks and threats. The world's best cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, optical and drone technology. We will expand the reserves and make sure they are trained for both the military and the civilian economy so that they are ready to be called on, God forbid, in the event of war. We will get more bang for our buck, as we proved that we could do under the previous Conservative government. Yes, we had a lean, mean fighting machine. Yes, we were efficient. But under the previous Conservative government, with that efficient spending, we were able to buy 5 Globemasters, massive strategic airlift, the Hercules aircraft, 17 Hercules aircraft, the Chinook helicopters, the Leopard 2 tanks, the refurbishment of our refueling vessels. The list goes on. And by the way, we were able to help our American friends destroy ISIS and Al-Qaeda. At that time, they had no concerns about us carrying our weight because we were punching above our weight, which protected our security and our economy. And then there's the border. We need to re-secure our border as part of this plan, Mr. Speaker. CBS reported, and I quote, that the Department of Justice charged Mohammed Khan, a 20-year-old Pakistani citizen living in Canada, with plotting to conduct an ISIS-inspired attack on the New York Jewish Center. Mr. Speaker, Khan was arrested in Armstrong in Quebec, Canada, just 12 miles from the U.S. This is on top of another ISIS fighter who came into Canada, got citizenship after allegedly being videotaped cutting up a human body on a crucifix in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, we have to screen people coming into our country. We have to identify threats and interrupt them before they harm us or our allies. There are 4.9 million permits and visas for people that will, in Canada today, who are not citizens or permanent residents, that will run out in December of next year. Many of them are great people, but when their permits run out and they're not renewed, they must leave. We need a plan from the government on how they're going to get these millions of people to go back to their home country, not be tempted by a stronger U.S. economy to cross into the U.S., thus threatening the security of the border and turning the Americans against us. We must crack down on drugs. We must scan the shipping containers, get our people into treatment and recovery to bring them home drug-free, not to please Donald Trump, but to prevent more tragic deaths of our people. Yes. In other words, we need all of this to say that we need to put our country and our people first. As Laurier would have said, le Canada d'abord, le Canada.
Canada first, Canada above all, Canada always.
Great motto must be Canada first, Canada last, Canada always. Here, here.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, one could easily talk about how that leader of the Conservative Party, while a member of Cabinet, had the lowest percentage GDP on defense spending. But that's only one relatively minor, but a significant point that I would say to the leader of the Conservative Party. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister, in 10 minutes, talked about a Team Canada approach, talked about the stakeholders. Let me remind individuals that are following the debate. Donald Trump in this issue is a very serious issue for Canada. We have the experience. We've demonstrated that. Oh, yeah. When negotiations got tough last go-around, the Conservative Party, with this leader, capitulated and said, no, just make a deal. We said that we are going to make a deal that's in the best interest of Canadians. Now he wants to flip-flop. Why should Canadians have any trust with this leader on the trade negotiations with the United States, given its importance?
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
First of all, I note that The Prime Minister was not courageous to come and debate me here directly on this today. He should be here in this House debating the future of protecting trade.
There is no point of orders this evening. We're on autopilot. The honourable leader of the official opposition, just to remind that we can't say.
Rules don't go out the window just because come on. We're all out. Come on. Rules don't go out the window.
I'll wait until the honourable member is done. Is the honourable member done? Thank you. Just a reminder to the leader that we can't say whether someone's here or not. The honourable leader of the official opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in the last round of negotiations, we remember what happened. The Prime Minister capitulated.
You did.
He capitulated. So here's what happened. Prime Minister did not get us an exemption to Buy America, as the earlier Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, had successfully done. Not only is Buy America still in place, it now applies to all levels of U.S. government procurement, which it never did before. Prime Minister did not get us out of the softwood lumber tariffs the way the earlier leader, Stephen Harper, had. Harper secured a reimbursement of the softwood lumber tariffs and an end to the tariffs for 10 years. They were reimposed under this Prime Minister and have been doubled by President Biden. This Prime Minister has had 9 years and 3 presidents, and he wasn't able to fix what Prime Minister Harper did in about 3 months. And then the Americans and Mexicans signed the USMCA. They walked it over to this Prime Minister and said, take it or leave it. And guess what? He took it, and now we're all taking it.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I don't believe you can govern a country like an advertising firm. This doesn't help to solve important issues. Saying Canada first, triple this, axe the tax, that has never worked. What I've heard from the leader of the official opposition are empty slogans. Now I'm going to give him a chance. Could he tell us what his plan is?
Qu'est-ce que j'ai entendu là? Okay. No dilatory motion, so I apologize for that last. So I guess we didn't do points of order because I didn't hear what happened there. J'ai pas entendu.
I didn't hear what happened. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse. My colleague for Jonquière called one of our colleagues an imbecile. Not acceptable. We do not accept it. Zero tolerance for that sort of thing.
L'honorable député de Jonquière.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, I was being heckled as I was asking my question. I withdraw the word that I used, but I would recommend all Conservative members to apply what we've just heard. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. Mr. Speaker, at least the blockist member has spoken for once. It's been months that the government has threatened his region with a decree against the forestry sector. And we heard nothing from this member. The 2 bloc members who live in that particular region have done nothing. Zero. Some bloc members have supported the federal government coming up with this order that hurts their region. The member should defend all workers across this region. I will cancel that order and I will work for softwood lumber workers because the bloc does nothing.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that was critical to this discussion tonight and what we highlighted in the request to have this debate was that Donald Trump questioned the Canadian border in particular. In fact, his 25% tariff is tied directly to his argument that he makes that crime and drugs are coming across the northern border, similar to the southern border, and that is the reason for the tariff. So as New Democrats, we have proposed to continue to train more officers under the CBSA as they are short 2,000 to 3,000 officers at this moment, expand their powers that could have been done since 1932 to actually allow them to do more type of work that's consistent with the RCMP. And as well, Mr. Speaker, we want to make sure that the training of the officers can be done as they go back to their regions to enhance the application process. But I do want to ask a specific question because it's important. In this last part,
I'll let the honourable member finish up his question. J'ai un appel au règlement.
I have a point of order, the honourable member. Well, on several times, it's difficult for francophones in this House. It's hard for us to follow the interpretation when there is all this noise and heckling, when they're singing YMCA in the House. So when there's this level of noise, it's difficult for us. So I would ask that you remind members, out of respect for interpreters. I do appreciate that.
To keep the noise down so that we can get through the questions and comments section of this, I'll allow the honourable member from Windsor West to finish up his question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And another practical element is opening up new training facilities as well for our CBSA officers. But going directly to a matter that's very important in terms of this Parliament already had the Conservatives voting against a supplementary budget of $26 million to our CBSA officers. And then on top of that, the member from Carleton was part of a cabinet that cut $120 million from CBSA and laid off 1,100 officers and also reduced the capabilities for them to work with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies in the United States and their border patrols, directly responsible from the cuts. So does the member from Carleton now wish to apologize for axing those workers and axing the officers that defend our border that are now putting our situation of trade in jeopardy with Donald J. Trump?
Leader of the Official Opposition.
No, Mr. Speaker, because in fact we increased frontline CBSA officers and we actually armed them. And furthermore, what we spent less money on was back office bureaucracy and consultants. Now, this member is busy bragging that he voted for a more expensive CBSA. Yes, it went to consultants. The money did not go to boots on the ground. They went to tens of millions of dollars of back office bureaucrats and high-priced consultants that increased the burden on taxpayers without increasing the security at the border. And that is the fundamental difference. We delivered more border security at a lower price. The fact that it costed less for us to secure the border is actually a plus. The other NDP doesn't understand. When you actually deliver a better result at a lower price to taxpayers, that is a good thing, and you'll get more of it when I'm Prime Minister.
I just want to underline, I did hear a lot of comments in the background. We just asked for people to be quiet, and I did hear the honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby trying to comment all along that. If you want to ask questions, I'm sure you would stand and ask questions. So questions and comments, question commentaire, the honourable member for Bay of Quinte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And something else incredible happened after the failed negotiations of CUSMA. Canada was USA's #1 trading partner for goods. It's now #3. Mexico is #1. And it's amazing it happened because Canada was kicked to the sidelines during those negotiations. And we all know the rest of the story. The average American worker now makes $22,000 more than the Canadian. $500 billion have sucked down to the U.S. So my question to the future Prime Minister of Canada is, can he tell this House how he will stand up for Canadian workers, their paychecks, and our security?
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we need a bring-it-home tax cut. The reality is that rising taxes, increasing delays to approve massive projects has driven $500 billion of investment south of the border. So we've gone from 10 years ago, the New York Times printing a headline that says, "Welcome to Canada, home of the world's most affluent middle class," an article in which it quoted that Canada's median income was equal to that of the United States, to the present state where the American per capita income is $22,000 higher than ours, the worst gap in a century. Now, this is directly a result of high taxes and heavy burdens on our economy. We will reform and cut taxes with the goal of bringing home production and paychecks to our workers. In other words, let's put Canada first.